Hey out there, this one goes out to the music teachers, the ensemble directors, because you know you've been there or you have your roster of students in your ensemble. You have the instrument listed, and then when you sort them by their instrument, it puts them in alphabetical order. And anyone who's ever gone to music school knows that the order of instruments goes by the score order, the printed music order, and alto sax is at the top, then baritone, clarinet, then flute is not the proper way. It's not the proper score order, and it drives a lot of directors crazy because you certainly want to sort the students by their instrument, because what we've done is sorted them by their instrument, then by their last name, and then by their first name. But what's happened is it's put the alto saxes on top, and that is just not right. So we've come up with a way to fix this, and I'm going to show you. So what I have here is a pretty comprehensive list of instruments that could possibly be played in a scholastic environment. There's a lot of these instruments you wouldn't see in a beginning band, certainly, but this includes woodwind instruments at the top. We have a bunch of woodwind instruments. Then we're going to go to the brass instruments. A bunch of brass instruments are listed here. Then we're going to go with some percussion instruments, timpani, these are pitched percussion. Then the unpitched percussion, it just says percussion. You can add to these if this list is not working for you, you can certainly add to them. We've got harp, piano, keyboard. Then we go to the voice parts. So we've got soprano, alto, tenor, bass. Then we have the string instruments that are plucked. So I just included here ukulele, guitar, and electric bass. And then we have the bowed string instruments ending out here with string bass all the way down here. What was helpful is to not include any of these names and instrument names that are the same. So that's why I called this way, even though an electric bass really could be called bass, and a string bass could be called a bowed bass, could be called bass, because we didn't want to have any of the instruments that had the same name. So therefore, we have made them unique names. The same thing happens with baritone, and we could also have a voice baritone. Actually, let's include that right here. Let's include a voice baritone, and we can just call this one baritone because that'll be unique. So we have a bunch of unique instruments listed here. You could just add to these lists if you want. Okay, so what we're going to do in this row, or I'm sorry, in the column just to the right of all these instruments, we're going to add a checkbox. And there's two ways you can insert a checkbox here, like this, or you could also insert a checkbox from the data validation page. You see this, it says checkbox here. You could do it either way. It works out the same way. Now what the checkbox does is that its property is it can be checked or unchecked. And it's a little bit like a light switch. The box will be on or off, except that when you check it, so in this case, we're going to reference the cell B2, and when I click it, it's true. When I unclick it, it's false. So it's a little bit like light is on, light is off. So this is going to be important because we're going to be using the fact that these boxes are true. We're going to be using them in a function that's going to help us do some things a little later on. So what we are going to do is a function called filter. So a filter function, there's a little bit of information about it. It looks at a range, and the range is going to be all of these instruments. We're going to select the whole column, and it looks for a condition. And in this case, you'll see it's asking if something is greater than 5. But really, the condition, it needs to know whether a value is true or false. You see that right here, true or false. Let me make this a little bit bigger. It asks you whether the value is a true or false value. Well, we know from the checkbox that that can make it true or false. So what we're going to do, so our first thing is to let's select this range, so Shift Control down, and then let's just add some more rows just in case you wind up adding any instruments or voices to it. All right, so then we go back to the function. We're going to hit the comma. Here comes the next part. This is the condition where we need to know about true or false values. Well, we're going to select, that's going to be this column right here. Going to find out if these are, and let's select all the way down to where we had selected the other one, down to row 60. So now what will happen is, whichever instrument, because of this formula, this filter formula, whatever instrument that is checked will be listed here. So look at that. So let's say we have a beginning band. A beginning band would have flute, clarinet, alto sax, a trumpet, a trombone, maybe a horn. Why not? Let's just include them. And bells, glockenspiel, snare drum, bass drum. This will be the selected instruments perhaps for a school band. So I'm going to title this column Selected Instruments. If you like the formatting of this one up here, I'm just going to click on that cell, click this paint format, click on this cell, and you'll see it instantly makes it look the same, which is a really nice feature. So now we have a list of instruments that we have selected right here because of just using this one function. All right, so we've selected these instruments. Unfortunately, there's no way to check or uncheck all the instruments quickly. You have to just go through and click the ones. For instance, you want to set up for a jazz band, you would include this instrumentation for a jazz band. Let's see here. Let's just say percussion and guitar, electric bass, and where's piano? All right, so this would be your roster selected instruments for a jazz band, let's say. Now, the next part of this, let me just show you one more thing. If you don't select any instruments, any checkboxes, let's go through and select all of these. You'll see right now it has this little bit of an error, and because it didn't find any matches for the filter. So if that bothers you, you can wrap this filter function in another function. I'm going to put some parentheses around this. Wrap this in a function called if-error. And so the if-error function works where there's a value, and that's this value right here. And that's what it's going to do if there's no error. And if there is an error, we're going to just leave it blank. So let's leave this blank right here and see how that takes care of the error problem. And it still works properly. So let's go back to our beginning band: flute, clarinet, alto sax, trumpet, trombone, and am I missing? Maybe we'll throw a horn. It would be an advanced beginning band, and we're going to have snare drum and bells and marimba. All right, so I think that is a beginning band. That's pretty good. Okay, now the engine that is going to make all of this work is what we put over in this column. And in this column, we need to rank all of these instruments with a number. So that's why it's very important. This order that's over in this column gets transferred over to this column. And the order is going to be a rank. We're going to give that a ranking number here in this column. And so what we're going to do, we're going to use an if statement. And so the condition that we're testing for is to say, if this cell right here is blank, so that's the question we want to know. Is it blank? If this cell right here, D2, is blank, then we're just going to leave it blank. But if it's not blank, we want to put a number in this cell that is one number higher than the last instrument cell. So let me just show you what's going to happen. We're going to say E1, and we're going to add 1 to that. So you're going to see we have a 1 right here. Now, if we hover over this dot in the corner and drag down, and I tell you what, I'm going to drag a lot down. I'm going to, because maybe you'll have an ensemble that has, let's say, 50. Let's go all the way down here, 51 instruments. I think that's a little absurd, but you've got a beginning band. It only has 8 instruments, and you'll see them right here. They are now ranked according to what number they are. And you'll see it's dynamic. If I get rid of the clarinets, well, now alto sax is the second instrument. If I want to add bassoon, bass clarinet, you'll see it keeps changing dynamically. Can everyone see that? It changes dynamically based on what instruments get checked. So someone shows up with a tenor sax. Now we have 11 instruments. This is what's going to help us sort the instruments in score order, is this ranking over here. It's almost like their score order rank is going to be listed right here. So what I want to do now is I want to select all these cells here, and I'm going to go down pretty far. I'm going to select more because just in case, I'm select down to 51, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to name, go under the data menu to named ranges, and I'm going to call this is like a chart of our instruments, and I'm going to call this our ensemble. And since it's going to include our instruments that we selected, and it also includes their order, their ranking order. And so we're just going to give it a name right here, and we're going to call it Ensemble Order. We're going to use this a little later on. Okay, so that's one name range. And then we also need a name range for the instruments that we have selected. Oops. And again, we're going to give ourselves more rows just in case we need to use them in the future. But if you're only going to be using a beginning band or a jazz band that has, I don't know, like in this case 12 instruments or 15 instruments, you don't have to select all the way down to row 40. But we're going to call this range selected instruments. All right, so we have 2 selected named ranges here, and we're going to use these a little later on in some formulas. Now let's go to our band roster. So here we have this school band. It looks like 14 students in it. And a nice way of making this easier for you is to select the instruments from a pull-down menu. Each cell can list a pull-down menu. And so what we can do is we can go to Data, Data Validation, and right here, Show Drop-Down List in Cell, and a list from a range. Well, that range, remember we had called it Selected Instruments. That was the exact name. It's very important right now that you type the named range in exactly how you had named it on the other page, because in a lot of formulas the named range pops up, but in this particular menu page it does not pop up. So you've got to type it in exactly the same. So now if I am correct, let's see here, Angelica Schuyler, this is the choice of instruments. So let's say she's horn. I'm going to label these instruments. I'm just coming up with stuff. So now we have these instruments selected for this band, and it makes it very easy. Now let's say, for instance, one of these students, Aaron Burr, he comes to school one day, he has no longer wants to play horn. Somebody's grandfather found in an attic an alto clarinet, and so suddenly alto clarinet is what Aaron Burr wants to play. And so I selected it there on the instrument list, and now because I selected it there, I can go right here and select alto clarinet, and it's instantly assigned. So this is a pretty nice way of selecting instruments for your ensemble. And like I said, if you didn't have them selected properly in the beginning, you can just go over here and fix it later on. So, oops, we're not going to use, let's use this roster here. All right, the band roster. Okay. Now, how do we get that score order ranking onto this page? We're going to use another function, and that function is called Vlookup. And so the Vlookup needs a search key, it needs something to search for, and it's going to search for that in a range. Then it will need to return one of the columns of that range, and then it needs to know if that range is sorted. And by sorted, I believe it means alphabetical order, and that, of course that's what we're fighting against, so we need to say that no, it's not in alphabetical order. So let's start with the search key. We're going to look for, of course, this instrument, the horn. Then we'll put a comma. What's our range going to be? Our range is the named range that we did before, which, if you remember, was called the ensemble order. See, here it pops up, the named range pops up, because the ensemble order included the two columns. The first column is where the Vlookup is going to look for this horn, and then the second column is the order of the instrument rank in score order. And so that's the second column, and then we're going to say it's false. And we're going to end parentheses, hit enter, and you'll see, let's just check this out. So it's saying that the score order, let me type this up here, score order, that horn is the 9th instrument, and if we go over here, we see that yes, the 9th instrument down is horn. All right, let's go back to the band roster. Now all we have to do is click and drag this down, and it has put all of those instruments in order, just like that. Now, what I'm going to do is select this entire chart. I'm going to type Shift and the Control button at the same time, the right arrow, then holding down Shift to Control, then the down arrow. That's going to select this whole ensemble. I'm going to go to Sort Range from the data menu. Yes, we have the header row. So we want to sort by the score order. Then we want to sort by the last name. Then we want to sort by the first name. And let's sort them out. Look at that. Our band is sorted in score order. We've got flute, clarinet, alto clarinet, bass clarinet, a couple of bass clarinets, bassoon, alto saxes, a bunch of alto saxes, of course. It's a beginning band. Trumpet, horn, trombone, and the bells and glockenspiel. So just like that, we have a beginning band sorted in score order. Should you want to make changes, I'm going to do Shift Control down. I'm going to hit delete. I'm going to delete all those. Now, of course, score order is not correct because it is it's looking for an instrument that it can't find. But let's go back over here. Let's say we want to make this a vocal ensemble. Of course, it's the cast of Hamilton. They're singing, not playing instruments. So let's make them a vocal ensemble. So I'm going to uncheck all these instruments. And here are our singers. This list is a little low on singers. Let's add right here the voice part, mezzo, soprano. And we're going to select all of these voice parts right here. All right, so there are our voice parts. Let's go back over to our band roster. Of course, now this is a choir roster, but nonetheless, Alexander Hamilton. I unfortunately don't know what voice quality any of these amazing performers from Hamilton are. I'm just completely guessing. about all of these. Why are we missing bass? Isn't there a bass voice? Yes. Yes, bass voice. So we're going to do the same thing. You'll see it has ranked them in score order. Shift Control right, Shift Control down. Going to go to sort range. Yes, it has header row. We of course want to sort by score order first. Then we want to sort by last name, then by first name. And now our cast of Hamilton is sorted by score order of voice parts. Thanks so much everybody for watching this video. Please subscribe to the channel, give it a thumbs up, and in the comments let me know if you would like to see any other cool things done on Google Sheets, especially for music teachers. Thanks so much. Take care everybody.